Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to everyone who's coming on. Welcome to all my replay viewers. Thanks for showing up. I'm going to flip my camera around so I can talk with you guys better. Hello, thanks so much for coming on. Welcome to everyone who is with me today. If this is your first time with me, I am the owner of LoveHopeAdventure.com. I talk about the marriage relationship, intimacy in marriage, how you can have a closer relationship with your spouse, and I also do some lifestyle posts, so sometimes you'll see some food or some crafts or other just general parenting on my website. So if you have not been with me before and this is your first time, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on. Today I wanted to talk about a couple of ways that you can let your spouse know that you want to have sex. And I was reading an article earlier by Sheila over at toLoveHonorAndVacuum.com, and I follow her a lot. She posted this article today to give people some ideas of how they can communicate to one another that they want to have sex with each other. And I think that she had some really good ideas, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit because I think sometimes we do struggle to share with our spouse what our needs are. And I'm going to tell you something. I have heard from a lot of readers, I've experienced this in my own marriage, just miscommunication in this way. So one of you thinks you're being super clear about communicating your needs to the other person, and then you get very hurt and frustrated when they don't seem to understand what your needs are. And this can be more than just with sex. This can be with a lot of different things. So you think, I have said it so clearly, and they don't seem to get it. And so a lot of couples will have this miscommunication when it comes to sexual intimacy. One is trying to let the other one know they want to have sex, and the other one is misreading them and maybe thinks they're not at all interested, or maybe feels a little bit like, oh no, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I'm not going to put myself out there because what if they say no tonight? What if I've misread them? So it can be very, difficult for a couple when they're trying to communicate with one another about their sexual needs, and then they misunderstand each other. And they could have had sex, but they didn't, because they didn't listen to each other. They didn't understand each other's, what they were trying to say or what they were trying to communicate. And actually this week, I wrote a post on my blog about 3 ways to ask for sex from your spouse, that you shouldn't ask for sex from your spouse, and 1 way that you should. So I kind of bypassed a lot of the beating around the bush ways of asking your spouse for sex. So yeah, somebody says, we'd rather be blunt with each other. That's the 1 way that I said you should ask for sex, is just be blunt. Let's just say, hey, can we be together? It's been a few days. I really want to have sex with you. I know that initiating is not easy, though. I know that for some couples, this can be really hard. And especially if you're newly married, if you've only been married for a few years, it might be more difficult to initiate. It also can be hard to initiate when one spouse has done a lot of initiating and the other spouse has done a lot of refusing. It can make it very difficult. And so it's important in each marriage that you figure out what those things are that you can say to one another or do for each other that lets the other one understand what their need is. So some of the ideas that Sheila blogged about today was one reader told her that they have a candle at the side of their bed. It's a battery-operated candle. And if one of them is in the mood, they cut that little candle on and leave it so that the other spouse will know. I've actually heard that before. Somebody else I know said that they had a friend who they would have like a taper candle, I guess, and they would just burn it when they were in the mood. I have heard some people say that they have some kind of jar where they can like put maybe a rock out from this jar. They keep this jar of rocks and they take the rock and they put it on their spouse's pillow, and then the spouse has like, I don't know, maybe a day or something to make good on that request. I think that maybe there is some other ideas you might could do. Sheila talked about one reader saying that they have a pillow It's just a normal bed pillow. One side is the design that matches the room. The other side is a heart. So if one of them flips the heart, flips the pillow over to the heart, that kind of lets them know, hey, I want to have sex with you tonight. Some other things she talked about was having specific jewelry. Maybe you can wear like specific jewelry in the day, so you let your spouse know, I'm in the mood. If you approach me, I'm gonna be ready for it. This would keep you from having to explain a lot of things to people or children or whatever, and you can communicate it that way. She also talked about having like maybe specific outfit, saying every time I put on this particular skirt or these particular shoes or whatever, you can know that I want to have sex with you tonight. And then she talked about maybe having a sex fragrance, and I've actually talked about this a lot because having a designated fragrance for when you have sex will actually help you to get in the mood when you put it on. It just associates that smell with sexual intimacy. So that's actually really kind of a good thing if you struggle to get in the mood sometimes. So she had a couple of different of those ideas, and I thought those ideas were really cool. I liked them. One thing, though, is that you've got to have a very clear conversation with your spouse about these things that you decide you're going to use as ways to tell the other person you want to have sex, so that there isn't more miscommunication. So don't think that these ways are easy ways out. I think that they can be kind of fun and kind of flirty and mysterious because only you and your spouse know what this particular jewelry means. Only you and your spouse know what that burning candle means or what that certain fragrance means. If you had a code word, I don't know. I think that might really kind of get found out. And I think she talked about having a code word, and I thought, I think eventually your kids are going to understand what the code words mean, because there's only so many times you can say, hey, can we play football tonight? Before they start going, wait a minute, football's not even happening, so what are we talking about? Somebody said that they've heard of having a sex jar where you put $1 each time you have to save for, each time you have sex so you can save for vacations. That would be awesome. Unless you're really broke and run out of money. Might need to make that 10 cents or something, depending on your budget, right? So those are a couple of ways that you can have a fun, flirty way of letting your spouse know, or you don't do it enough. Oh, I hope not. Let's get those jars making money, people. So I think that, you have a couple of things you can do, maybe some of these ideas that will help you to initiate sex with your spouse if you sort of struggle in that area. And it's hard. It's hard for both husbands and wives to initiate because nobody wants to be rejected. And so we all have to take the time to sort of feel our spouse out, even if we've been married for a long time, to figure out, okay, is this going to be a good night for them? Because I think we don't want to ask our spouse to be intimate with us on a night they don't feel good, or a night that they're just, completely exhausted. So, we want to get that timing right for our spouse. But one thing about a lot of these ideas, especially with initiating and letting your spouse know that you are available to have sex, is you're going to have to do a little planning in advance, which I think can be very good for a couple. I think planning sex time out in advance is super helpful because it gives both people the time to mentally prepare, both people to know what to expect. Because I'm going to tell you, it's very disappointing to get to the end of the night and one spouse expects we're going to go straight to bed and they're really, really, really tired, and the other spouse expects to have physical intimacy, and neither one have communicated their ideas for the night. And that can be a very hard thing on a marriage, especially if you have a higher drive spouse who asks their lower drive spouse for sex, and then they get refused in that way. So I think that, if you are in that kind of marriage where you're really struggling to get on the same page about sex and when to have sex, and you guys need some fun ways to help each other know that you're in the mood or that you'd like to have sex tonight. And maybe you're not even in the mood right now, but look, there's just going to be times when you're like, okay, it's been 3 days. We really need to come together as a couple and be reunited So I'm going to light the sex candle, even if I'm not currently in the mood, so that I have some motivation tonight to be ready and to be available to my spouse. So those are some good ideas you guys can come up with, or you can go the more blunt route, which is what I've chosen because I'm not very good at beating around the bush and I'm just not good with subtlety. So it's a lot easier for me to just come right out and say it. But like I said, there is kind of a fun, flirty, thing that you can do if you've got those things in place with the jar of rocks and putting $1 in the jar or whatever you're going to do, as long as you've had that discussion ahead of time. It's very important you and your spouse both understand what that burning candle means. It means y'all have got to be in agreement on this. Don't think that if you light that candle and your spouse hasn't agreed to have sex when the candle's lit, that's just going to really hurt you both in the end. So make sure you're in agreement about it. You have the discussions ahead of time so that expectations will be met. And that's kind of what I had to say today about this topic. If you guys have any other ideas or some ways that you can initiate sex, somebody asked, how do you communicate if you just want a quickie or not? Well, you can come right out and say it. I'd like for this to be quick. Or you can go with Sheila's idea. She had an idea today that she said, all right, so if you are a woman, this wouldn't be for a man because she said use a skirt. She was like, okay, so put a skirt on, don't wear any underwear, and tell your husband whenever you're wearing that skirt that they should, approach you, that you are available for them, and this is great for quickies. Because you're just sending that message, when I wear this skirt, I want quickies from you or whatever. So that might be something you can do. Somebody else can say, hey, you got a few minutes with somebody's idea. I would say just be really, really verbal about it. Man, I really want to have sex with you. We've got 10 minutes. Or you can say something like, hey, I'm going to go to the bedroom and I'm going to take my clothes off. That's pretty bold right there. If that's not your style, you're going to have to work through it. But I think that the more that you initiate, the more you ask for sex, it's much, much easier. And so maybe you're thinking to myself, well, I don't know how to ask for a quickie without coming off as sounding, I don't know, whatever is worrying you in your mind about that, or you feel embarrassed to ask for it. The more you ask, the more you initiate, the easier it gets. And it's really important that both people in the marriage work toward initiating. If both of you guys take turns initiating, and it's not always the one, it makes your sex life so much better and so much easier. So those are a couple of ideas that I had. Later on this week, I got a question this week about doing a scope on how a woman can be pleased or have sex when she can't actually have sex. So like if she's postpartum or on her period or something. So later on this week, I'll give you guys some ideas of some things you can do with your spouse if you are a woman and unable to have sex, and maybe even some ideas for men who are struggling because of whether they're dealing with erectile dysfunction or maybe they're sick or have had surgery or something. So we'll kind of talk about that later on this week. And if you have any questions for me and you'd like for me to do a scope about it, please feel free to email me at lovehopeadventure.com@gmail.com. And if you can't remember that address, go to my website, lovehopeadventure.com, and go to my contact page, and my email address is on there. And that is a private way to ask me questions. If you have a question you don't mind the world knowing about, you can always tweet at me. I am lovehopeadvent on Twitter. And I like answering reader questions, and I have answered a lot of reader questions. I don't always tell you guys that a reader asked it of me. Sometimes I just answer it. So if you have anything specific, you can put it in the question here in our chat time. But if it's more personal, definitely email me and I will get to it. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. And if you want to see what else I've been blogging about this week, go to lovehopeadventure.com. And I look forward to seeing you guys sometime tomorrow.